I've just started work on a new mini diorama for some of my Ewok figures, and the first process when I start a diorama is to sort of concept up some new bits and bobs, and this diorama I want to have some actual lighting in it. So in front of me now you can see my concept piece for a glowing fire stick to build into the diorama. As you can see, it's pretty effective. So this is the first part that I'm going to build, and I'll show you how I do it. What I found is that on eBay you can pick up these small tea lights. They are LED tea lights to replace the ones that you would normally light with a match, and they consist of a flickering LED, a small switch on the bottom, and a little battery, and I picked up 3 of these for 99p including postage, so they are an absolute bargain. And as you can see, the fire effect is pretty good. I'll switch off my desk lamp so you can see better the flickering nature of them. They're quite convincing, so for a diorama these would be perfect. So I'll go ahead now and show you how I made this flaming torch, and then we'll get on with building the rest of the diorama. The first thing you need to do is to take apart the tea light. These are fairly easy to get apart. They're only just sort of clipped together like so, and inside you'll find there's the sort of main components are an LED and a battery and a switch. So for the first part we just need the LED. So this is the LED straight out of it, and if I put it on the battery here, you can see it flickers quite nicely. There's also a nice plastic sort of fake flame effect piece which is separate to the body, so you can just pull that out, and that we'll use again to create the flame on top of the stick. So for the stick I'm using a small piece of fine bamboo. The reason I've chosen bamboo is because it already has a hole down the middle. I could have picked another bit of wood and drilled a hole through, but this bamboo already has the hole. So you can find fairly small pieces of bamboo at the garden centre. This didn't cost a great deal. I've got this sort of stuff in the garden anyway, so it's easy enough to use. You'll need to cut it to the length that you want. I'm keeping these sort of fairly short just to match the Ewok I have here, and I'm using this Ewok as a scale just so I keep everything roughly the right size. And you need to use a knife to sort of carve out one end of the hole a little bit more so that the LED will fit in there nicely. So let's just do that. I'm just twisting it a bit just to enlarge that hole, because you really want the legs of the LED to fit in once we've soldered some wires onto that as well. So just make this hole a little bit bigger. So that looks pretty good. Let's take the LED here. And there you go. That fits in the top of the post quite nicely. So that's the first part of the process. Let's go on to the next piece. The flame effect piece of the tea light actually has 2 sort of clips where it's held into the top of the plastic base. These you don't need, so I'm just going to chop those off with the penknife like so, just to make a flat end. We can now use this, and it should just fit over the top of the LED. So there's the basis of the torch. Now we need to make it look a little bit more realistic, and in this instance I'm going to use some string and tie that around the top. I'm also going to paint the bamboo. The bamboo is a much lighter colour than I want. I really wanted a woody effect, so I'm just going to use some Humbrol paints to give that a quick coat and darken it down so that it looks a lot more like wood. You can watch some of my other videos to see the sort of Humbrol paints that I use, but they're pretty bog standard modelling paints. Once you've soldered your wires onto your LED, you can then thread this through the piece of bamboo. I've already widened one end as you saw, so this should now squeeze through. And the LED is not going to fit perfectly well, but it should fit close enough. And this end I'm going to cover with a bit of string anyway to look like rope. So as long as you can get it pushed in pretty far, that should be good enough. If I just get the fake flame, I can stick that over the top, and it should look perfectly good. I will be wrapping a bit of string around this so that should hide the join, and you won't see anything there. So now all I need to do is to paint this piece of bamboo to make it look more like wood. And I'm just going to use some Humbrol paints. Check out my other videos for the types of paint I use, and I'll show you the next stage. For the next stage of this light, I wanted to create a sort of rope effect where the torch part is connected to the wooden pole. And the way I've done this is I've got some fairly thick household string like this. It looks too thick and the sort of wrong sort of consistency like this. But if you split it apart, it's actually made out of 3 separate pieces of sort of thread. And these, I'll just show you now quickly on this bit. When you split them, sort of get down to about the right thickness for sort of Ewok scale rope, but it's still very white, so it doesn't look very good. So what you need to do is you can dye it, and I've just dyed this by putting it in a glass of hot water with a tea bag in, and the tea bag sort of stains it, so it ends up a sort of much more Hessian type brown rope. It looks pretty good, and it sort of matches the scale of my sort of Ewok diorama quite nicely. So I'm going to use this to wrap around, and that should give quite a good result. Right, I'm now going to use some contact adhesive to glue some of this dyed string on to make a sort of rope end to it. I don't need a great deal of this glue, it's pretty good stuff, it sticks very well. I'm just going to squirt a little bit around the top of the post and also onto the bottom edge of the flame part of the tea light, so that it sort of glues this in place as well, so there's no way that it can move. So just a little bit of glue, a few dots around like so, then get some of this string and I'll just gently hold it in place there for a second and then start wrapping it around, and build up a bit of bulk to it, because you want it to sort of look a little bit thicker, like it is where the flame is coming from. So something like that is the sort of look I'm going for. I can now chop off the string because I don't need all of this. I've dyed quite a lot of it just in case I make mistakes. So I can chop that end off. And then just a little bit more glue to hold that final piece in place there. For the centre point of my diorama, I found a piece of wood in my garden. This is a piece of horse chestnut tree. The sort of look and feel of the wood is quite nice because it's not too large a scale, so if you place it next to an Ewok it looks like it should fit nicely. I've cut this sort of a length of timber. This is about 8 inches long, and on the back of it I've made a few notches. This flat area here is where I intend to mount the switch and the battery pack. This will be hidden from view because it will be right on the bottom at the back, and I've also cut a notch. I intend to add a sort of a little fence piece where my flaming torches will be attached to, and to make sure it's nice and secured, I've sort of cut a notch there that I can glue it into. This needs now to be mounted onto a base plate, and again from my supply of bits of wood I've got a bit of hardboard here, which I've cut in a semicircular pattern with a flat edge. The flat part of it will go along the back of the tree trunk there, and this just needs to be screwed onto the bottom of the trunk there. Right, we're almost ready to put this together now. I've been out in the garden and had a walk around, and I've found a load of twigs which I've cut into fairly short lengths. These are going to be used to create the base part of this diorama. What I'll need to do is stick them all around the bottom like so, very close together, to create a sort of a wooden walkway like you see in Return of the Jedi. So that's going to be a fairly laborious job, but should give some quite good results, because these twigs are a pretty good scale. Again, they've got quite a nice sort of fine grain to them and a little bit of greening and different sort of colours. So I've sort of carefully chosen these. I'm not quite sure what wood they are, but they look pretty good. And here is my torch. I needed some way of holding this up because it needs to stand upright like that. So what I've done is I've bent a paper clip, and there's enough space in the bottom of the bamboo to insert the paper clip, and you can see now that it sort of stands upright. So I'm going to incorporate this underneath the wood, little bits of wood that I stick on, so that I can stick it about there at the back. And that means that it will stay upright, and I can glue it at the bottom, but the paper clip should hold it in place a lot better. So let's start constructing this, and we'll see how it all goes together. So here we have all of the bits of twig glued on. This took quite a long time. It's a fairly boring job to do, and you've got to make sure you cut them all at slightly different lengths so that you can fit them all in. As you can see, the effect is pretty good, and it actually looks quite convincing even at this stage. For the next bit of detail, I'm going to wrap some of the dyed string around the edge of the twigs to make it look like they're all tied together. I'll just show you a quick example here. Now, if I hold a piece like this, I'm going to wrap individually around each single twig, like so, going all the way around, and then I'll go all the way back again as well, and you'll end up with an effect of it looking like it's tied in place. If I just do a couple like so, like that, so it will look like each piece of wood has been tied on individually. This is again a job that takes quite a long time to do, but the result it gives makes it much more convincing and makes it look more like a Ewok village. So I'll start that process now, and you'll see how long it takes. So there we have the finished base. All the twigs are now glued in place, and the string sort of rope effect is tied on. It actually looks pretty convincing. Let me stand an Ewok on there for you, and you can see that it all looks pretty good to scale with the Styles figures. So I need to attach the two torches that I have here. These need to be attached onto the paper clips. The paper clips are actually a bit long at the moment, so I'm going to chop those short. And I'm also going to tie them on at the top using the same string so that it looks like they're part of a sort of fence along the back. And then I need to then do the final bit of wiring and get everything wired up so that they actually light up again. So let's get all this tied on, and we'll go from there. So there you go, that's one torch on, and the cable is sort of neatly out the back there, and I can just feed it along underneath and then attach it to a power supply there. Right, what I want to do is attach this torch to this back peg, so I'm going to use a piece of the string that I've previously dyed, which I have here, and sort of try and thread it around to make it look like it's been tied on, so it'll be a sort of once over, once under type effect like that. I think it probably could do with going around twice just to make it look sort of neat. So something like that should look pretty good, and it looks like it has been tied on, and so I think that will do. I'm just going to tie it around the back, and then that's all held in place nicely. And there we have one tied on. It does look quite effective. It looks like there's a bit of a fence there to stop any unsuspecting Ewok falling off the back. So it's all about the right size. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the other one to the other side and then do the wiring. And that should be pretty much it for the mini diorama. And here we have the final piece. As you can see, it's all come together pretty nicely, and the sort of mini diorama looks pretty good. The last bit was a little bit fiddly, getting the electronics to fit on the back of the bit of wood, but using a hot glue gun I was finally able to attach it. The flickering flames look pretty good at this scale. They give quite a convincing effect, and they don't look out of place actually on display like this. So overall I'm really pleased with how this has come out. It took a fair bit of sort of fiddling about to get it to finally work, but the end result is well worth it, and it's going to make my figures look even better than they normally do when they're out on display. So I think for the amount of effort I put into it, it's a very good result and pretty easy to do. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy this video on the making of a mini Ewok diorama.